Vacation for you.
Yeah, he's like, no, you do not do that.
You're not from Brazil.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Hey.
Yeah, but I feel like.
I'll be tan then.
Yeah, but I feel like even
Give it a
most
couple days.
most
I for sure don't know
Brazilians.
any Portuguese either. Like, not even a little.
Okay, bom dia means good morning.
Okay, perfect.
There you go.
That's all you need.
Get me out of any bad situation.
Yeah.
Kids about
Good
to
morning.
Good
jack.
morning.
Yeah. Good morning. Oh, okay, fine.
I won't get you.
I won't
I won't
get
You're
get you.
local, is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like most Brazilians too. I've seen like they're not dark skinned. Like look at Joe. He's pretty light skinned and stuff. You
No,
know.
you
and-
wouldn't guess that Joe's, like, not from here.
And then I met a couple guys at level 1 a while back, and they were from Brazil, and I wouldn't have had any idea that they were from Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go either way.
Yeah.
Go either way.
You just have to play the role when you're there. Just act like you know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't look like a
Bon
tourist.
dia.
Oh, there you go. Just like that with the dance.
They can all dance, so we'll just
Just go like this.
Hey, you go. Like, what is this guy, Italian?
Wrong accent.
Yeah.
You're doing it wrong.
Wrong
We don't know
geographical
him.
location.
We don't know him.
Who was this guy?
He got lost.
Oh, my gosh. Hey, guys, welcome to the Coast Range Podcast. I'm here with our special guest, Arielle.
Yes.
Arielle. Okay, I wasn't sure if I was going to say it right because you have an E at the end, and I couldn't remember if that was pronounced or
What was
not.
your next guess?
Arielle.
Oh,
No.
gosh.
No, but I remember it as Arielle, right?
Well,
That's
how do
what-
you say
that's what we should
Danielle?
call
Do you
her
say
from now.
Danielle?
No, you don't. You're right.
Same thing.
And Gabe, we're here with Gabe and Arielle, you guys from probably most known for me from the West
West Coast
Oh,
Advantage.
gosh.
West Coast Advantage podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry, put
Yeah.
that together. Words are tough for me today. I'll make it happen though.
Still early, I guess. Not really.
But also old school CrossFitter's been around for a really long time. Started at TJ's gym, right, Gabe?
well, back in New York in CrossFit Garden City.
Oh, geez,
TJ's gym, and now part of NC Fit, which is pretty cool. But we actually both started on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
CrossFit Strong Island, what up?
Dang, awesome. So we brought you guys here today to my main reason wanting to bring you guys on is you did like a little 6-month vegan kind of trip.
6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Oh, gosh.
I thought it was 6 months.
That's a
No.
long time.
No, 6
Wow.
weeks. Okay.
Well,
Man.
6 weeks
Judging
is
by
still
how well it
longer.
went for me, 6 months would have been really bad.
Oh.
Okay. So
Bad
that's
idea.
the
Well-
the main thing that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
For sure. Definitely dive
Yeah.
into that.
And that was quite the experience.
Yeah, for
Cool.
sure.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear from CrossFitters, like real, like true
Mhm.
deep into the CrossFit world, what that was like. And then also like your guys' background, you've been around CrossFit for a really long time. When did you start CrossFit, Arielle?
2013.
And Gabe?
2013.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Twins.
So been around CrossFit for a while, and the gyms that you guys started at were really kind of old school CrossFit.
Yeah.
You walk in, there's kind of rusty barbells in one corner, newerish barbells over here, and now you guys are with NC Fit, and that's a pretty new thing. So I'd love to discuss, like, what has that change been like? and
Yeah,
everything.
for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
And then also kind of talking about a little bit more of where you see like what you've done with NC Fit and where you're with now, and like maybe some things that other boxes can learn from the stuff that you guys are learning in that
Yeah.
stuff right
Yeah,
now.
for
So
sure.
those are the
Yeah.
questions I have for you guys.
Awesome.
Now.
Yeah, same. I think that we were interested in the vegan thing a good amount. I know we have people that we work with that have kind of dabbled in that. So if there was anything you found, like research-wise, benefits, what was hard, maybe some tips and tricks, things like that. And then I'd
Yeah, for sure.
just love to hear, same with Wes, like kind of what your experiences have been.
Mhm.
I used to work at NC Fit too.
Really?
It was
Fun.
a really, really long time ago. Brett didn't even know.
I didn't.
Wes didn't even know. Don't worry, I didn't even have my level 1 yet. I worked in their daycare.
Oh my gosh, that's,
That's
awesome.
all. It was there for
what,
like 4.
which one?
It all comes full circle.
Stevens Creek? No.
Oh.
The one that was
JK.
by the one that was by it was like by a barbecue place.
I literally have no idea
Oh.
geographically where anything
Cool.
is.
It was
so.
like the big one that was like used to be
Oh,
like
well, one of off Saratoga.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Totally.
right next to the Hofbrau.
I did
That closed.
the yes, the
That
Hofbrau.
closed.
Mhm. And there was like a hot tub place next door. It was super sketch. What? It pretty much felt like that.
I think it was. I think I heard that there was like a sting.
I
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
am
say.
not at all surprised because it was pretty gnarly, like hanging out there. So I worked at like the front desk for a minute, and then the daycare. Susie got me into that. Technically, yes. Before it was NC Fit.
Vincent Fit.
Don't talk.
By the way,
don't talk to me.
you were deaf. I was like, oh God, what the heck? That's okay. So my questions, I guess, also follow along with the vegan diet that you guys are on. Specifically, what protein sources did you find had the most value in that, or which were the most difficult, and did you have to supplement? And also, going from like a TJ's gym to a corporate business, kind of like NC Fit, like what were the biggest challenges you guys faced making that switch from the like you said, old school gym to like a corporate gym?
Yeah.
Cool.
What do you guys want to start with?
Well, I
so
think
many questions.
the vegan thing is definitely
All right, let's start with
hot
that.
topic.
start. Everyone brought it up first.
I know, that's the
So
hot
exciting.
topic.
So it's funny that you bring it up, like as CrossFitters, as someone that has always been like paleo, and it's almost the other side of it, right? And that's actually the reason we thought about doing it was because I had a whole bunch of reservations. I was very skeptical. I didn't think it was going to work. And as we try and help people with nutrition, we thought sometimes when we want to say that something might not be the best idea, we come from a place of not having tried it out, which is why we actually wanted to do it. We wanted to see what the challenges were, what would make it difficult, so that we could speak to them from experience, as opposed to if someone comes to us and is like, hey, I really think that vegan is the way to go. If we want to steer them away from that direction, we want to do it not just because we read this thing and we think that this is better, but because we experienced it and we know what the hardships and obstacles are. So that's actually why we did it. It wasn't because I think this is what's best for me. It's I think this is actually really, really tough, and I want to be able to speak to why exactly it's tough, not just kind of repeat stuff that's out there.
Right. And I kind of along with that, I approached it more as like, maybe this is the right way to go. I was coming off of some health issues, and it was really bothering me. A lot of foods, like I was having trouble digesting a lot of different foods. So I had heard that a vegan or a plant-based diet was maybe the best way to go in terms of kind of clearing out your system. So I was really curious to see, if that was true or not. So that was a big thing for us also. We wanted to try that out.
Yeah, and it was also approaching it from the side of an elimination diet. Like we always preach, figure out how you react to gluten, dairy, legumes by cutting it out for 6 weeks and then reintroducing them. And I wanted to look at it too in terms of like, well, when was the last time that, you cut off all animal products? Like what impact does that really have on us? It's really tough to say, especially because one thing that we learned doing this is it is such a polarizing thing, right? Like you talk to vegans and they're like, eating animal products is the worst thing ever. And then, people have this kind of predetermined, that, vegans are crazy and they're, doing this thing. So it becomes a conversation that's very emotional for a lot of people, which is why we also wanted to like, let's get rid of all this and really see how, then reintroducing, meats, going fish first and then white meat, so poultry and stuff, and then red meat, and really see how that impacted us on the backside once we were done with it. So that was also really interesting, and another reason that we kind of did it, because I have done, and I know Arielle has done, cutting out dairy, gluten, legumes, and we have a pretty good idea of how that impacts us. But we really couldn't say like what I don't know how red meat really impacts me, or other stuff.
Yeah, and I mean the best way to do that, and like we've heard from different nutritionists all over that, like you always get blood panels done, right? So you look at those markers, and most people, I think, that's not in the cards for them a lot of times. So the best way to do it is just to cut it out, see how you feel. I had blood work done like before we did the vegan thing. I haven't gotten blood work done since we've done it, but I had really high creatinine levels, which is from red meat. So that was like an interesting thing to start knowing, that because we had been eating red meat so much, like cutting it out, those did lower. So that was interesting too.
I've seen a big kind of kickback on the red meat thing a lot lately too, where you'll see even people kind of defending it now. Saying, hey, it's the highest micronutrient count that we can get out of any meat that there possibly is, right? And so, but from your guys' standpoint, I guess like diving into Brett had the question about protein stuff, but like what was the biggest positive impact you guys felt or saw in your guys' actual recovery or CrossFit workouts when you started doing it?
Yeah, so initially I felt really good. I don't know about you, but I felt really good because, and I think it was more along the lines of the fact that all of the protein sources we were taking in had a lot higher carb content. So we were initially getting a lot more carbs in our diet. So recovery-wise, we felt really good. We were performing pretty well in the gym. I know at least for myself, I was still tracking my macros through the vegan thing, and I wasn't getting nearly enough protein as was prescribed for me. I think I was getting around 75 grams of protein.
Wow. Okay.
But I
How
was
much
taking
do you weigh?
in 145.
Okay.
So I had been eating around like 120, 130 grams of protein. So then I took that that lower amount of protein, and I kind of was just like, all right, well, I'm going to make it up with the fats and with carbs, so we'll see like if that actually is sustainable or not. Because I was also curious to know, like, do we really need the amount of protein that we think we
That's
need?
a super hot topic.
That's just a big hot topic, like with red meat versus not eating red meat.
So I almost was like, this might be a good experiment in itself to see, like, if we really do need that much protein. So we had originally cut that out, so we had a lot more carbs in our diet. So I think initially it was that we felt really good because we had a lot more carbs coming in.
Yeah.
Do you want to add
Well,
anything?
I mean, one thing that I wanted to add was, we could have done this and been a lot more scientific about it by correcting for like how we felt and how we recovered, not being impacted by changing the macro levels. Like we could have been really good about, okay, this is how much protein I was having before. Now I'm going to have exactly the same number, but from plant sources. But a big challenge there, and why we kind of went away from that really quick, was just the volume of food that you need to eat. When it's all plant-based, it becomes a huge challenge.
It was super fun at first, but
well,
it started getting really tough, right?
Well, it was fun at first in that, we were trying things that we had never tried before.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, like, what's the best veggie burger? What's the best, like, trying all these, like, dairy-free, like, cheese things and all these other things. So it was fun in that I genuinely enjoy cooking. And so it was really fun to kind of like work with things and kind of try and make things taste really good and really look forward to meals with ingredients and stuff that we would never even look at before. Also in seitan and actual like meat substitutes. Yeah. So getting creative with that was really fun. But it got to the point where, like, to have the same amount of protein that you were having before is just like it's a lot of work, it's a lot of money, and it's just like I'm like full of volume of food. I'm not getting, and also it's really hard to find things that are just protein. It's always like she said, it's protein, fat, protein, and carbs. So it made it tough to say, okay, we're going to keep these three numbers exactly the same, except we're just going to do plant-based stuff.
And I was also staying away from soy products and wheat products. So wheat gluten and nutritional yeast, things like that, I was also avoiding because those were things that I had known already bothered me. So
she couldn't eat anything.
So I literally was eating beans, chickpeas, like beans and... What was the other? Oh, we had plant-based pea protein.
I was going to say, did you supplement with a protein?
Yeah. That was essentially all of our diet was pea proteins.
Yeah, because we were still working out.
Yeah.
We were still doing strength training and
Did you supplement with anything other than protein? So did you add any other micros? Or like supplement form?
Like essential amino acids or anything like that?
No, I didn't add anything else in.
Interesting.
I took an algae supplement. So that was another great takeaway from this, is really diving in. And like you said before, we were talking before we started recording, one of the cool things about, having a podcast and doing these things is it really forces you to kind of like look up and do a little bit of research on the things that you're doing, and you learn things that you wouldn't have previously. So really looking into like, okay, what are the micronutrients that a lot of, people on these plant-based diets aren't getting enough of?
Right.
And, a lot of that, those minerals and stuff, like a good plant to get it was actually algae.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I looked up like a really good algae supplement and started taking that. B vitamins and stuff, really stuff that's only found in animal products, is also found in algae. So that's the only thing that I added to it. And then I was taking all the Purity products. I used to work for Purity. That's actually how I originally met Wes.
Cool.
So I was taking the magnesium, the vitamin D, even though technically they're in bovine gelatin capsules. So that was, but
Cheater.
I mean, I wasn't,
Cheater.
too worried
we were
about
also
that
having
stuff.
honey. I feel like we should say,
You were having what?
Honey.
Honey.
Well, honey's like a gray area.
Yeah.
Some people say
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning?
Because bees technically
bees.
are an animal.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So
a product of bees.
It's a byproduct of bees.
Of a bee.
Yeah.
But you're not like hurting the bee to get it.
Right. But some
It's the same
people
with, yeah, it's the
say
same
it
with
counts.
cheese.
Interesting.
Some people say it counts. So
That's like their contribution. So what if you went up the tree and you got the honey and you brought it down yourself?
Well, I don't.
Instead of like beekeeping.
got it.
Yeah, just like, let's just do this. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know,
if that
maybe.
would count
So
or not.
interesting.
But we were having
Yeah.
honey.
I feel like, never mind. We don't need to talk about honey. I could talk about honey. I feel like that's like their contribution. Don't you think bees are happy that we're no? Someone is going to be vegan and hear this, and they're going to get really mad at me.
We actually just listened to.
I think there's already a lot of people mad at some stuff that we've said.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
and things
well,
we've
that
done.
was the thing too. It's just it's such an emotionally charged
Totally.
issue, and
But it's the
and
same as CrossFit.
that's
like,
even the reason. Well, this more so because it does go into like the morality
Right.
of like hurting animals and
Yeah.
Totally.
that reason that a lot of people are doing it, and that's why actually we were doing these episodes on our podcast where we were kind of updating people on it, and we actually started moving away from calling it vegan and calling it plant-based because we were doing it for the fact that it was plant-based food, whereas vegan
Yeah.
has all this kind of
it has an ethical connotation to it.
that
Yeah.
really
Which we weren't-
wasn't why we were doing
Right.
it.
We weren't
Yeah.
empowered by that.
But it was, in kind of, looking at articles and doing a lot of research. I mean, there's just so much out there
Right.
of, people attacking vegans with stuff that honestly isn't even founded in any logic. Like one really interesting thing is people bring up that like, when you harvest soy, the machines go in there and they literally kill any sort of like critter.
Right.
There's rabbits, there's all sorts of stuff that are in those fields, and like no one cares or thinks about what goes into getting these products to make an alternative burger.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, you look into it a little bit more, and the majority of the soy that we harvest in the U.S. is actually fed to livestock. So, yes, all this damage is happening to the ecosystem and animals to get soy, but the majority of it's actually being used to feed the cows in the factory farms.
And that was a big part of when we reintroduced meat, like choosing what we decided to reintroduce and the quality of what we decided to reintroduce.
Did you have any adverse reactions at first? Like, did you figure anything out?
No. But I think that the biggest thing was that we kind of went from, we both introduced fish first, and then from fish, we went to very high quality meats. Yeah.
Like grass-fed stuff or
Grass-fed,
And
free
wild
range,
game.
wild game. Like those were, we kind of like went right from not eating meat to eating like all of the wild game meats.
Well, that was also a really interesting thing for me specifically, was the first time that I had like a piece of steak after. Man, it was amazing.
So good.
I thought it was going to be something like
No.
cautioning, and it was
No,
like,
it was
best thing
so
I've
good.
ever
like,
done.
I've always, and I've recognized this before, like your body knows kind
Right.
of what it's been lacking or what
Yeah.
it needs. And I think one thing to kind of, pretext this is towards the end of it, in the beginning, like the first, we did this for 3 weeks, and I would say we can split it up into like week 1 and 2, the middle 2 weeks, and the last 2 weeks. We progressively got a little bit lazier, for lack of a better word, about being super diligent about getting the amount of protein that we needed,
Right.
because it was a lot of work in
It
the
was a
beginning. So in
lot
the
of
beginning, we were, having a bunch of beans and
Right.
making sure that we were getting a good substitute and all these things. Whereas towards the end, like you kind of just go for the low-hanging fruit that's quote unquote vegan,
Right.
and it ends up being like a lot of carbs, a lot of things that are, processed foods, and we weren't having all that food. So we actually felt pretty wiped out towards the end of it.
I got sick like right around the 3-week mark. I got sick and then could not get out of it. And normally, like, I have
You can
pretty
fix something.
I have a pretty good immune system. Like, I could get out of it pretty quickly. And it was like the last 3 or 2.5 weeks that we were doing the plant-based diet. I was like so sick the entire time, and it was like not sleeping well. There was like no energy. I had zero energy. Didn't matter how much I did sleep, if I could like make it up. It just was it was rough last couple of weeks.
And it was funny because I went from like around week 3, like I think I want to do this longer than 6 weeks. I was
Next
like,
week,
I was
we
like,
were
I
like,
feel
"Get
really,
us
I
out
feel
of there."
good. And then it like progressively, I was like, no,
Oh,
no,
man.
I'm like ready to end this, you know, now. So that was an interesting part of it. But, you know, that's why I think that when we did kind of reintroduce stuff, it like felt so good and everything tasted so good. So that was interesting because I didn't expect it either. I thought that maybe I would have some sort of like adverse, like, whoa, like, you know, my body wasn't ready to digest that. You know?
So what you've learned through, sorry, Brett, learned through all of the different sources of protein that you added back in, so animal protein, has that changed the way that you eat protein now, or are you a little more lax about the quality of meat, things like that you're eating?
No, that's stayed pretty consistent. We go out of our way now to look for higher quality meats, but we're also just more aware of what is in the products that we're buying. Like if we buy like pre-made sausages, things like that, like we're looking at where they came from, we're looking at the ingredients that are in it, things like that. So we're just a little bit more aware, I would say, of what we're putting into our body in terms of meat. And it just is worth, to us at least, it's worth the investment in that time and money to make sure that it's a higher quality product.
It's interesting to think that if you didn't take into consideration the quality of the meat and you just reintroduced meat, I wonder if you would have had an adverse reaction, like if it would have felt crap. I remember it must have been like the end of my high school career, which was so long ago. And I watched some documentary about beef and how it was just like the big farms and the antibiotics they were being fed and like grain diets and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I was like, I will never eat meat again, or I won't eat red meat again.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And I was super consistent with it for like multiple years. I still eat chicken, things like that. And I like put meat back into my diet, and I'm sure it was something dumb. And it just made me miserable. Like it hurt my stomach. It didn't feel good. And then I started to, and still to this day, I only eat good quality meats. And I realized the difference. So
I mean, that's the biggest thing though, like the lower quality meats, the reason that they're so inexpensive now is because they're being just fed soy products, and the soy products that they're being fed aren't even high quality soy products. Like there is all this garbage in the food that they're eating, so then that transfers into what we're eating.
That's what I was going to ask. So what ingredients are you guys specifically trying to stay away from when you're looking at the back of a package on meat stuff?
Like any fillers, anything you, like, I always tell people, just if you can't pronounce it, it shouldn't go into your body.
Yeah, for sure.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for the fillers, and I also look at the casing that it's in.
What do you mean by that?
Like if it's a
sausage?
Yeah, like if you're looking at a sausage, like if it's I forget what it's called. It's like a synthetic casing that they put sausages in, or if it's actual
intestinal lining?
Yeah, like the intestinal lining that they put it in.
That would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
just in terms of the nutritional quality of it, too, like the intestinal lining at least has some nutrients that you may absorb, whereas the synthetic casing, your body doesn't know what to do with that.
Do you know exactly what the name of that is? Like if somebody's looking in the back, like what it would be?
No.
Okay, we'll try to put it in the show notes after to make sure that we put that for people. But I think that's huge. Like you look at, I mean, shoot, I get bacon and sausage and stuff like that all the time, and I try to make better. I'm like, okay, no nitrates. You know, make sure it came from farm raised, grass fed. If it had some sunshine, that's even better. And do some research. You know, when I'm sitting in the grocery store, I'll actually pull up, okay, what's the name of this company?
Yeah.
What does it look like on their website and stuff? But I think that's big for them. Brett, you had a question about
I was going to ask you, when you were doing the plant-based diet, what was your higher sources of protein that you found other than
I was eating a lot of chickpeas and black beans.
Okay.
Those are like my go-to. And then I honestly just had to supplement most of it with pea protein and things like that. So I had a really good pea protein that I like that I still use because I'm dairy-free anyway. So I forget what it's called, but it's I just ended up having to supplement a lot with that.
Yeah. Were you using the Peori stuff, or was it a different one? Peori has a pea, or no, they have a rice protein.
Yeah, it was a rice protein.
That has beef collagen in it.
Yeah, so
it's not vegan.
I did not use it.
Yeah.
Also, I was rationing it because we only had one bottle of it, so I was like trying not to use it. But the one I found is like a complete plant-based protein, and it is gluten-free, dairy-free.
Yeah. And that was another misconception that a
yeah.
little bit of research squashed, was that you can't get a complete protein source from plants.
Yeah.
You absolutely can. It's a little tougher, but they're out there, and you know, that's one of the things that we kept hearing, is that there's no complete amino acid profile from plants, and there is. You can get a pure one that does it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of this stuff that you'll like hear someone say it, and like you take it for fact, and it's you know, interesting when you're put in the position where you're like, well, let me do a little bit of research and find out these things aren't true. So that was interesting. But for me, you know, the major source for me, luckily, you know, gluten doesn't impact me negatively at all. So I was able to do a lot of wheat gluten, seitan, meat substitutes. So they have all sorts. I mean, they have like chorizo, they have sausages, they have like ground beef that's all made from wheat gluten, and it's supposed to taste like those things. And it was interesting because you prepare this stuff and it's tasty. It tastes pretty good. And you know, if you go into it with an open mind of like, let me give this a shot, as opposed to like, oh, this is like, you know, vegan food.
This can't taste good.
Right, right, yeah. So it was interesting. Another thing that, you know, we had a lot of fun with during these 6 weeks is, especially being in the Bay Area, like looking for vegan restaurants and going out and experiencing these places that had amazing food that before, if we were looking for a place to go out to dinner on a Friday night, like, oh, it says it's a vegan restaurant, we would literally like, well, we're not going to go there, you know? So it was interesting. We tried a whole bunch of places in the city and in Berkeley that had like really, really good food, and just opened us up to like another, you know, because one thing that we preach to people all the time is just, you know, adding variety and making food an experience, and not making like, yes, like the broccoli salad and grilled chicken has a place, especially if you're like super performance driven and like, you know, the routine like is important for you, like, yes, but I think that sometimes then we get away from food being what it's supposed to be, which is a social experience, and going out and trying new things and enjoying it. I do think that there's a little bit of a slippery slope when it like has to be this, you know, thing that fits into my numbers and everything. And like I said, that has a time and place, and we've all been there, especially as athletes. There right now. But it was interesting that this kind of forced us to really kind of venture into a different world that we wouldn't have before.
You said that that's like one of my big concerns when I hear somebody wants to go down the vegetarian or vegan pathway and they're a CrossFitter, is rebuilding muscle tissue, right? And having the complete protein. Yeah. And so we've always told them, like, hey, you can make this happen. And Brett actually even is working with a vegetarian right now and has showed her the types of, you know, plant-based foods that you guys can get to come together. And most of the time we found that it's just so hard to do that every meal, right? And so then we end up being like, well, here's some branched-chain amino acids, supplement with this, and that'll help. What were the plant-based foods that you guys found that really helped make that profile, that branched-chain amino acid profile, complete?
I mean, we focused a lot on leafy greens.
Okay.
But what else?
Well, for me, it was wheat gluten. We were taking a pea protein supplement, so we were supplementing. And this pea protein that we found was, you know, full amino acid profile. I wasn't supplementing with branched-chain amino acids at the time, but I felt pretty good recovery-wise with the pea protein that I was taking, and then just making sure that I was getting, you know, a bunch of beans, legumes, and all that stuff, and a bunch of protein from that just in my food.
Cool.
Yeah.
What you said you were looking for the best veggie burger. What did you find? Who makes the best veggie burger?
Well, I made a pretty good one.
Oh, you made one your own?
You did make a good one.
I made a good one.
Yeah.
Keep going, sorry.
The
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, Trader Joe's had
that really good one.
high protein veggie burger, which I still buy a lot because it's really good.
And what was that made mostly of? That was
pea protein.
Pea protein.
Yeah,
and
it had
chickpeas.
beans and chickpeas in it.
Yeah.
It had quinoa in it. Yeah, quinoa itself is relatively high in protein, which is really good.
But the one quinoa burger that we had was like pretty dry.
Yeah, I was gonna say quinoa usually isn't very like moist.
Yeah.
It's
and
moist.
Moist.
This is when people are gonna tune out.
Yeah,
that's what came to my head. That was bad.
Yeah. Dr. Prager's has a pretty good veggie burger, but it's not gluten free, and it also doesn't have that much protein in it. It has like 8 grams. The Trader Joe's high protein veggie burgers had like 23 grams of protein.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge, right? Is like usually you think, oh, burger, like this is a protein source.
It was literally veggie patties.
We started turning it around, and it was like a carb patty, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Most of them were.
Yeah.
And the ones that tasted good were.
I was watching. I saw a show on YouTube. It was with these guys called Good Mythical Morning, and they did a thing where they had like all the veggie burgers out, and then they were tasting them and trying to figure out which was the best one. Now I don't know what the protein value was on those ones, but there were some of the ones that are like this actually tastes and texture was very much close to like meat.
I will say the Beyond Meat products taste like burgers.
It's called Beyond Meat?
Beyond
Meat,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Those ones taste like burgers. They're not gluten-free. They might have one that's gluten-free, but they all taste like it. They're pretty good.
Yeah. I was also like thoroughly impressed with dairy-free cheese substitutes.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Tell my husband that.
There's local.
You can make cashews taste just like cheese, apparently. It's magic.
There's a restaurant in Santa Cruz called Cafe Gratitude. And my husband is like anti-dairy substitute. He's anti-meat
so
substitute.
Was I.
It's not like he's not like mean about it. He's just like, no, it's not going to taste good.
Yeah.
And I took him to this restaurant, and they had cashew cheese, and he for sure thought it was cheese.
Yeah.
He was like, this is cheese. I love this. I want to get this all the time.
I love this.
Told you. It's good. It's a really good restaurant.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
Yeah, and there's also, it's cool that we live in an area where we can get local options. So, like, there are regular big brand options like Diet Cheese, and there's another one that I'm blanking on. But then there's also, like, locally sourced ones, which is really cool, like Miyoko's, and then there's, like, Follow Your Heart, I think is another one. Those are really, really good.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, 6 weeks didn't turn into a lifetime.
Did not turn into no, but I will say that it kind of reshaped how we
100%.
shape our meals now.
Cool.
And what is that like now?
So we started adding in a lot more veggies to our diet. Gabe especially. Like, I was eating a lot of vegetables before.
I was terrible about it.
Gabe did not eat vegetables.
This is a big deal for me.
Yeah, that's
Having
impressive.
Salad, like I'm not that person, and I've been trying my best now to do that for sure.
Yeah, so that was a big thing. And then I just think personally, I added in some more foods that I had been avoiding. Like, I had avoided beans like the plague because we grew up with like the paleo connotation that you can't have beans. Like, you can't have legumes. They're to be avoided. So I carried that for a really long time. But then now, like, I add that stuff in, and it's not always I have to have a meat with every meal. Which, like, before it was like, well, I'm only going to have protein if I have a meat with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good change.
Yeah. For me, it was a kick in the butt about, just being better about vegetables, which I was really bad about in the past.
Yeah.
And, having to, like I said, find interesting ways to prepare Brussels sprouts and kale and all these things. And just even adding, before, like, eating vegetables was, just getting a kale salad, like that's the vegetable you should eat. But we added so much variety while we were doing this. We added all sorts of sprouts and, different microgreens and just different things so that we weren't eating the same thing time and time again. And now, like, when we go to the supermarket, like, oh, I've had that before. It's good, as opposed to just like, well, my greens are going to be this one thing, going again to variety. So
and
that's definitely opened our eyes to all that.
Yeah, and we're more likely to try new vegetables because we know, like, trying them
Isn't the end of the world.
Exactly. Like, trying them wasn't bad last time we tried it, so we might as well try something else.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Constantly varied.
Yeah.
And the really interesting thing is, for me, this, like, vegan experience, this 6 weeks of being plant-based actually has, like, completely opened me up to the world of really trying to wild game protein products and meats is something that I've gone down that rabbit hole. It's incredibly interesting to me, and I want to add more of that into my diet. Right now we found a brand, Durham Ranch, that does wild boar, elk, venison, and they source everything from New Zealand, because the problem here in the States is that you can't sell anything that is shot in the wild, because it has to be somehow farmed and harvested, because therefore it can be regulated.
Right.
And then we recently went, a friend of ours had a duck dinner where, what they do, because you can't sell this stuff, is he just had a restaurant that he has a really good relationship with, and they hunted for a whole bunch of venison and duck, I think in Texas, and they brought it to the restaurant, and the chef cooked it for all of his friends, and we had it, and it was amazing. Awesome. And it's the best way to guarantee that it's a high quality, just like the way nature was supposed to be meant. And even the interesting part about it was in really kind of looking at the polarizing arguments of like why you would hunt versus why you would be vegan, which you would think are completely opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, a lot of money that goes into, you know, hunting is for conservation.
Right.
And the reasons behind supporting one or the other are very similar.
Yeah. Like hunters are so much about like, I'm going to go out and get this elk and that's going to feed my family for an entire year so that I don't contribute to the factory farm industry that is really doing the harm.
Right.
So it's just been interesting that like the 6 weeks of doing something plant-based is actually, it seems like the most logical solution if you want to get, you know, high quality protein is actually this like taboo hunters where they're actually vilified a lot and for wrong reasons.
Right.
Totally.
That's super cool.
I'd like to switch gears a little bit.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Switch.
And talk kind of a little bit about like now your guys' experience like working with NorCal Fit and that kind of stuff. So you guys started off just like, you know, the normal drink the Kool-Aid CrossFitters, tried one workout and you're like, what have I been missing my whole life type of thing? And you're into it. And tell me what got you guys like now CrossFit's your life. It's what you do, right? And you have a podcast surrounded by it. Even your choices to become vegan are surrounded by it. Arielle, you're a nutritionist now, right? And you're taking on people and stuff. And then you guys are working for NorCal Fit. And so this is like your complete life. Tell us what got you into CrossFit in the first place and kind of started your journey down where you guys are now.
Yeah. So I was not athletic growing up. Anything where I wasn't automatically good at it, which was all sports, I didn't like it until a friend of mine was doing like the bodybuilding thing, and she's like, oh my God, I'm going to try CrossFit. So I went with her and I loved it. Like our first intro class was the most fun I've ever had working out in my life. And I'd been a personal trainer before that. I got into personal training in college just because it was the only place hiring was our athletic center at the gym. And then I went into this class and everything I knew about personal training was like completely off. So I took this class. I loved it. My friend that I went with hated it. She like couldn't pick it up, didn't understand it. We were doing like med ball cleans. Like I remember that was like the first thing we did. And she couldn't get it. She hated it because she couldn't understand like the movement itself. So I finished out the foundations alone. And then as soon as I finished the foundations, I actually ended up going to a different gym closer to my house, but I had seen that they just opened and they were hiring like a front desk person. So I was like, oh, perfect. This is my in. So I started working there. My front desk job turned into like apprenticeship for coaching, like immediately. The week I got hired, I signed up for my level 1 and then it was like done from there. Yeah. So that was how I got into CrossFit.
For me, it was very different because it was I've always had some sort of athletic endeavor. I swam through high school and college. I did triathlons, you know, very competitively right after college. And that's actually how I found CrossFit. I was really, you know, I didn't have the time in Long Island at the time to go like drive an hour to where, you know, the roads were good enough for biking, get my 3-hour bike ride in and then come back. So I did a little bit of research and, you know, CrossFit seemed like a way to like get a little bit stronger on the bike specifically, and not have to do it in so long. So that's how I started and I fell in love with it. I wanted to coach it. And, but what really kind of turned my mindset around about it was once I got my parents into it. Because for me, it was always performance. I now want to be a competitor in CrossFit. I want to snatch this and that. But the really cool part was, you know, once I got my mom into it first, and then she got my dad into it, and then just like over the first like 3 months, 6 months, and a year, and now that it's been 5 years because they've been doing it as long as I have, watching like their group of friends and stuff like age the way, you know, anyone would age at that age, and then watching my parents get younger, more mobile, healthier, happier, even like more socially social. Like, you know, they're hanging out with people younger than them because they're going to like gym events and stuff like that has completely opened my eyes to just like the real part of what we're doing. Like we're all athletes here and that's a big part for us, but like, I mean, you guys are also coaches and you're a business owner. And once I kind of like really like it hit me on the head that like what we have here is something that's like literally changing people's lives and making them younger. That's when I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You know, and at first that was the nutrition side through Puri and supplements. And I mean, awesome company, and I loved my time there. But and I've always been a coach because I've always like done that part-time because I love it and I love being on that side of it. But yeah, when the opportunity came to kind of make this, you know, everything and just being in there and being involved with an actual company that has gyms and is touching people on that like personal level, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Awesome.
And I'm sure that you, more than anyone, would understand that as a gym owner.
Oh yeah.
But that was really kind of the thing that like turned things around for me.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's become so much more than just being an athlete.
Yeah. The cool thing is that now we're working on the corporate side with a corporate wellness program with NC Fit. So we're getting the opportunity to kind of work with people that haven't bought into CrossFit. So we're that first line of defense.
They're actively against it.
Yeah, like most of them are actively against CrossFit, and we came in and didn't even blink. We didn't blink. We hit the ground running and have been running our classes, and so many people have started coming into the gym just because they've heard how much fun it is, how great people feel. It's cool that we get to kind of change people's perception of what CrossFit actually is.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to go into. Like, you're a normal CrossFit coach. People are coming to you because they want to do CrossFit,
Right.
or they know somebody who did it and they want to try it and stuff.
It was a huge challenge for us.
But then you
at
like
first.
walk downstairs at your corporate office and you see these people doing CrossFit. And if you're against that, you're against that, you know? And so that's got to be a whole new level of mental coaching that goes on with these people. Give us some examples of some of that. Like, what are some of the the pushbacks you get from people, and how do you overcome those?
Well, we just started. So when we first started running our classes, we didn't have any barbells. We had no like real equipment for them to use, and we had some people that wanted it, some people that had zero interest. And recently, when we added barbells into our programming, we finally got the equipment. A lot of people looked super apprehensive about touching a barbell. And the coolest thing is, like, with those barbells, we also got PVC pipes.
Yeah.
And we've been doing, the biggest thing is, like, we talk to all of our members very really. Like, if I'm going to ask you to do this, it's not because I want you to do something you're not comfortable with. I want you to do something because I think it'll benefit you.
Totally.
And I think that we've built a rapport with enough members where even if we have someone new come in, they trust that we have their best interest in mind because all these other people trust us. So it's been just a really persistent battle of winning people's trust over.
Yeah, I think that it's actually good that we didn't, because the reason we didn't have all this equipment in the beginning was because we couldn't. We were very limited by the space we were in. We basically took over a really nice hotel gym. So ellipticals, treadmills, you know, pre-core machines, stationary bikes where people are like sitting back on them. You know, like, and then we came in and we wanted people to like, you know, start doing dumbbell stuff and all this stuff. So I think the first step was not calling it CrossFit actually.
Yeah,
know,
we don't call anything CrossFit.
Is calling it, you know, like NC30, NC45, just kind of following with the branding that all the other gyms do. But that actually helped people at least come through the door because everyone's doing CrossFit, right? Like everyone's, you know, we have one of the workouts we had last week was dumbbell DT. And it's funny because whenever there's a benchmark, they're so confused about why it has a name.
They're like, why does this workout have a name?
Yeah.
Dumbbell Grace. They're like, who's Grace?
Yeah. But they're all doing it and they all love it. And I think a big part of it was just, I think we've gotten to a point now where people's preconceptions of CrossFit, whether they love it or whether they've tried it, unfortunately, somewhere where they had a bad experience, it's kind of baked in. And so I think the first step in really getting people to do what we know is the best bang for your buck for them to be healthier and move better with their bodies is to maybe introduce it with a different name and just kind of get them to do it. And once they start doing it and start loving it, be like, hey, guess what? Like, you're doing CrossFit.
Yeah. And the
like,
classes are shorter too. So we have 30-minute classes and we have 45-minute classes.
Okay.
So that was, I think, a little bit easier for people too. It was a lower barrier to entry. They don't have to commit to an hour. And most people didn't have the capacity to do an hour yet. The people that did stayed for 2 classes at a time. Now we have some people that do 3 classes at a time, and I'm like, go home.
So they do the same workout back to back to back?
No, so we run like 2 or 3 classes, but they're different. So we'll have we have like a boot camp style class, an NC30, which is just like the Metcon portion of a CrossFit class, and then an NC45, which is like a little bit of strength and then a Metcon.
Low skill strength.
Yeah.
So no Olympic lifts, but we get people squatting, deadlifting, pressing.
Right.
Gotcha.
So we do we'll run like our boot camp, NC30, NC45. People will do all three
of them
at once.
Holy cow.
We're like, maybe that's not your best bet. But a lot of people will do like back-to-back ones, but it gives them the opportunity to ease into it, right? Like they can do one 30-minute class, and then a few weeks later they feel like, all right, now I feel good like in this class. I feel good leaving this class. I feel like I can maybe do one extra. And the community is so supportive that like people, if they're like on the fence about staying for class, people will be like, oh my God, you can totally do it. Like we can work together. It's cool. It's like very exciting to see.
That's cool. I think that's one of the coolest things that Jason's doing with this whole thing is that he is reaching people that never would ever go near a CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
Because he's literally going to you.
Right.
I put a gym downstairs in your building, so here
you
it
don't
is.
have an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, regardless, call it what you want in the CrossFit world of if they're doing CrossFit or not, or you guys aren't doing Olympic lifts, and I feel like people should be. It doesn't matter because he's reaching people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The most important thing is movement, right? So if as long as you're moving.
Yeah, you get out of your desk for a little bit, come downstairs and move around for 30 minutes, and you're going to be better, right?
Exactly.
And our goal is definitely to get people to do everything that we know people should be doing, because high-skilled movements have a very powerful impact on people.
Yeah.
You know, everything that goes into the process of learning and mastering those movements. And, you know, once you hit a certain age, you're kind of not learning new skills. So people should learn new skills. There's so many benefits to that. We all know that. But it's definitely something that I don't think would have worked if we would have just hit everyone right in the face from day one. So it's actually, it's I think the fact that we're slowly getting this new equipment and stuff, I think is actually a really, really good way to slowly introduce this to people. And going back to your question before, I mean, we get the same pushback that I'm sure, you know, you guys have heard in the past is, you know, the whole like, well, squatting below parallel is bad for your knees. And well, I have this thing where I shouldn't pick a barbell, or people thinking that they're going to get big and bulky.
Yeah.
You know, well, CrossFit's going to make me big and bulky for a lot of, you know, the ladies in our community.
We haven't had that as much as I thought we would. Like, I thought for sure more women would be like, I don't want to touch that. Like, I don't want to touch this barbell. I don't want to get bulky. But a lot of them have been, like, super empowered by it. But I think it's just how we approached it, like, slowly introducing those movements. We used only dumbbells at first because that's all we had. And I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
People were like, oh, I want this challenge.
Yeah.
Cool.
Instead of,
And we still have, you know, a bunch of people that have zero interest in doing more than coming in and, you know, watching something on their iPad when they're on the elliptical for 45 minutes. You know, and it's better than them doing nothing. But at the same time, I've already had conversations with people where they're like, you know, like, yeah, I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm like, I don't look or feel any different. And those are the conversations that we can then have and be like, hey, like, you can feel a lot different and a lot better in less time too, you know, because people that were doing that and now are just taking our 30-minute class, you know, they do that for 2-3 months and they're like, whoa, you know, what's going on here?
And they're also getting, in classes, they're also getting more knowledge than just what workouts to do. They're getting things like nutrition information. Like, we talk about stuff all the time in classes, even if it's just like other members asking me questions or asking the other coaches questions about like what they should be eating, like how do you cut this out, things like that. And the people that come in and go on the elliptical, like, they don't get that information. So that's part of the challenge too, is how do you relay that to the people that need it most? Like, the people that come to our classes have already bought in.
Well, I was going to say, there's got to be buzz created in the building.
Yeah.
Like, and like, even if you're not directly talking to that person, like, you talk to 10, they're talking to 20, you know, they're talking to 30. And so there's got to be a way it's getting to everybody in some way.
And we have,
like, Bob, you got muscles now. What the hell, dude? Like, you know, what are you doing?
I mean, we ran a nutrition challenge in November, and part of it was in our dining hall, which is right above us in the gym. We put a little like icon next to things that were NC Fit approved for the challenge.
Oh, cool.
And that created a lot of buzz because people would go into the dining hall and they would look at the menus and they didn't have to think. They could just pick the little blue apple, things like that.
Cool.
So it was people that may not have even signed up for the challenge, but they were still choosing things that were like the healthier options on the menu, which was huge. And people still come in and they ask if they can, like, if we could put that back on the menus. And it's people that don't take my classes that have asked.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the biggest thing is, like, people definitely are hungry for change, and they're putting the time and effort. They're coming to the gym. They're taking an hour of their day to you know, feel better and move. It's just, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's, people think that they're going to get hurt as soon as they pick up a barbell, and, they've had a knee surgery, so all they can do is the elliptical, and that's so not true.
Yep.
But it's also trying to figure out the balance of getting that information to them, but also like
not scaring them away.
Not scaring them away, and also like because we're in a building where people work, and a lot of times they're coming in at lunch to like, just have time to themselves. Like if they come in with headphones and do want to watch something, like sometimes it is their kind of break from the day.
That's your only break from the day, if you think about it. Like that's their time to decompress.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like if that makes you happy, like go for it.
Yeah. And like, people don't know what they don't know, but it's also like, how do you approach them and have them take out their headphones and listen to you if, they're so much about like, I got my routine and I'm doing it, So it's tough, but it's slowly turning around, and it's been exciting. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. So if you guys were going to give a piece of advice to a new CrossFitter like you guys get all the time, with everything you've learned, and you guys have learned a lot over the past, 6 years you guys have been doing CrossFit now, what would be that one piece of advice you would give that new CrossFitter?
Ooh.
Are they like a new like they're at a gym already?
Yeah, sure. They've kind of like drank a little bit of the Kool-Aid. They're doing it, right? And if like you're like, do this one thing, it's going to benefit you the most from the start of your CrossFit career going forward, what would that be?
Ooh. Trust the process.
Yeah. What I was going to say is like use your coach. Like use like listen to the people that have put all the time and effort to like have the wealth of, because there's no one thing to say, right? But I feel like a lot of people, especially in the beginning, like fall into the error of thinking that they know more than the coach that they're paying to help them. Like use the community out there of people that really want to help you. Ask them, what should I be eating? Ask them like, should I be having this pre-workout before if I'm tired every time I come to the gym, so that you can start the conversation about your energy level should be here regardless of what you're taking before. Just I wish that when I had started, I had been more open to just really asking questions and
it's not a
people in the
burden
community
to ask your coach.
Yeah.
Like we want those questions. We want you to know. We want you to know what we know. We don't know what you don't know until you tell us.
Yeah. So it's a tough question to answer because there's so many.
Yeah,
tips.
for
That's
sure.
a good one.
And
I
it's
like
totally
yours.
dependent on the person too. Yeah, it's been on the person and who they are, what type of things they have, for sure. But I like that a lot. Yeah, you're like utilize this person who has spent their mainly majority of their lives learning these very few things that are going to help you out a lot.
Exactly.
And for the most part, like if you're at a CrossFit gym, you're not paying the $20 to $40 monthly membership. You're paying upwards of $200. You're paying money, so you should be getting that back in value from your coach. And the good gyms will definitely have that in their staff. And if you're not getting that, like that should also be kind of like a red flag that there are gyms that are going to give you way more than $200 worth of value.
Yeah.
And this place is one of them, and that's the thing. It's people making sure that they're coming in using Wes and using you guys and all the wealth of knowledge that you have to make sure that they're getting back, that investment they're making, which for a lot of people isn't cheap.
Yeah.
For sure. Where can people find you?
Oh, good question. We just recently changed our Instagram handle. It is now West Coast Advantage.
Oh, cool. Not WC.
Not the WCA podcast.
Okay, cool.
We have rebranded.
Cool.
And then our website is thewca.fit, F-I-T. My Instagram is Ari Sunshine. If you can spell it, by all means. I spelled it differently than normal, so.
It's A-R-I-E, Sunshine, right?
Yeah, but it's...
But it's a bunch of I's.
Yeah, there's a bunch of I's, a bunch of E's in there.
We'll
say
it so people can follow you.
Okay, so it's ARIESUNSHIINEE.
Cool.
Good luck.
Mine is just _ Gabe Yanez. And obviously you can also find me on the West Coast Advantage page and the website. Yeah.
Cool. And Arielle, you do nutrition coaching too.
I do.
Awesome. Where can people, if they want to reach out to you?
That is all on the WCA website.
Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
It's all on there.
And you're currently taking clients.
I am currently taking clients.
Very cool.
I have like 2 more spots if anybody wants.
That's as much mental power as you have left.
Yes.
I love it. Awesome. Great, guys. Well, if you're looking to find anything that we've got going on, a few different places on Instagram. We've got at the Coast Range Podcast. We have at Coast Range Nutrition, and we have at Coast Range CrossFit. Brett, where can they find you?
Nutrition_by_Brett.
Awesome. You guys can find me at West Pyatt 2013.
Go.
At Nat Loves You 22.
Nice
She
and
does.
simple.
All right, guys. We'll catch you next time.
See you.